Centenarians, people who live to 100 or longer, still die of the same diseases as the rest of us, just decades later, and after a shorter decline. Would you like to die like a centenarian? I know I would. So let's start by knowing our enemies, and that would be the four horsemen. Hi, I'm Kevin Mepham, and this is Thrivespan, building a life that thrives in every way, now and as you age. So, we're going to do a speed dating introduction to those four horsemen, which is what Dr. Peter Attia calls these four big causes of death in his fantastic book, Outlive, which is the modern Bible for living better longer. And that is going to be the source, as best I interpret it, for what we're going to be talking about today. So, horseman number one, heart disease and stroke, number one killer. Now, this comes from high levels of a cholesterol transport protocol called low-density lipoprotein, LDL for short, aka bad cholesterol, although it's actually the transport that is bad, not the cholesterol. Okay, high levels of this cause plaques to build up in our arteries, which eventually either clogs the arteries or the plaques break away, and that will result in heart disease or stroke, heart attacks or stroke. The plaques are very difficult to detect while they're building up. So instead, what we can test for are the risk factors. This is done at your annual physical through a lipid panel, and that is testing for the levels of LDL, HDL, high density lipoprotein, the good transport particle, triglycerides, ApoB, which is an indicator on the bad transport particles, and a one-time test for something called Lp(a), which is a particularly dangerous form that some people are genetically predisposed to. Fortunately, easier to treat or prevent than it is to detect, and the obvious thing is lower that LDL through diet if your system is responsive to that, or through medication like statins. Avoid metabolic syndrome, quit smoking, keep your blood pressure low, not too low. Brings me to horseman number two, cancer. We don't fully understand how cells become cancerous or how cancerous cells spread. This makes prevention, detection, and treatment really difficult, which is unfortunate because those treatments that we do have are more effective if we catch the cancers early. We only have screening for 5 out of dozens of possible cancers, and that would be breast, prostate, colorectal, cervical, and lung. And those tests are not always, we're not able to use them as effectively as we'd like, which leaves us really with prevention. So avoid smoking, obesity, metabolic syndrome, it keeps coming up. Get the available tests that are there, get lucky. Horseman number three, neurodegenerative disease. This would primarily be Alzheimer's, also Parkinson's, and some others. We still have little understanding of why this begins. It can progress undetected for years, and we still have no good way to cure, treat, let alone reverse the symptoms. Fortunately, there is a lot we can do to prevent, in other words, reduce our risks. Exercise, including strength training and aerobic, plenty of high quality sleep. You're going to hear me preach that one for a long time. Good vascular health, which we talked about with heart disease and stroke, and metabolic health. There that is again. Prevent hearing loss, which seems like an odd thing to relate to neurodegenerative disease until you realize that one of the ways to fend off, to reduce your risk is to keep your brain stimulated, and hearing loss is even more so than something like blindness, cuts off the stimulation that comes from social interactions with other people. Build the cognitive reserve through keeping your brain challenged with new things, and a movement reserve, which again is that exercise, including strength. Horseman number 4 is this thing called metabolic syndrome. This is a progression of disease from insulin resistance to prediabetes to type 2 diabetes. On its own, it's only the number 7 killer. But as you can see from the fact that it keeps coming up as a risk factor for the other 3, the big 3, it is a major risk multiplier for all of them. It increases heart disease and stroke by a factor of 6, cancer by a factor of 12, Alzheimer's by a factor of 5. It is caused by chronically consuming more calories than you use until you run out of capacity to store those excess calories as fat. It can be measured diagnosed in a doctor's office if you have 3 or more of the following. 1, abdominal obesity, and that would be a waist circumference greater than 40 inches for men, 35 inches for women. I believe that's what it is. High blood pressure, high fasting blood sugar, which means that you're already on the way to your body not being able to clear blood sugar. You're already into an insulin resistant and pre-diabetic state. High triglycerides and low HDL. Those last 2 are the things that we already talked about we would pick up in a lipid panel. This can really be prevented through lifestyle. The obvious one, of course, is no excess calories. Don't take in more calories than you use. Also, use more calories, so exercise, burn calories. Big one is build muscle, while we're on the subject of exercise, because muscle is our primary storage for those calories, those calories when they come in. We want to stick them in the muscle so that they're immediately accessible to the muscles to use. What doesn't go into the muscle goes as fat. And the more muscle we have, the more we're able to store as we eat it. Not all calories are the same. It turns out there's some research that suggests that fructose is a relatively higher risk form of sugar relative to purely how many calories it has. So reduce or eliminate fruit juices and products that contain added fructose. Let's see what else. Lose fat, frees up storage, and do that regular monitoring. Get your annual physical, make sure you're being checked, make sure you're getting an annual blood test that includes your fasted blood sugar levels. Okay? So that's the 4. Heart disease and stroke, cancer, neurodegenerative disease, and metabolic syndrome, the 4 horsemen. One of them is going to kick your butt at some point. But when you take these actions, then you're going to reduce your risk, okay? You may not have centenarian genes, I know I don't, but you can still die like one with a quick visit by one of these horsemen decades later than you otherwise might. So, exercise, build muscle, sleep, don't overeat, lose fat, don't smoke, ditch fructose, control your blood pressure, keep your LDL down, protect your hearing, get regular screenings. Call to action, because we always have a call to action. This is a fun one. Contact your parents, your relatives, make a family tree of disease. You know, everybody likes to make the family trees and who's related to who. Do that, but with the extra bit of information, which is which of the 4 horsemen have visited each one of those people, either killed them or given them a significant health risk. This will do several things for you. It will allow you to answer the question your physician's going to ask, which is, what is your family history, your family medical history? It will give you a sense of what you might be particularly at risk for, either genetically or through the lifestyle that you and your family were raised with that might have some behaviors in there that are fall into the ones we've talked about that are increased risk. And it will give you a sense of your mortality, which I feel like we kind of need to have in order to realize that we're not going to live forever and we need to start taking the actions that we're talking about here, okay? So, if you've had fun with this dark topic, which is why I'm wearing a black shirt today, and you want another video to cheer you up, watch this one about what is better than longevity. Okay? Then, till next time, thrive now for life.